Greetings one and all, and welcome to the final completed episode of Late Night Ponderings for the year 2021. If I remember to get it out in time. My series of mini editorials that covers a wide range of subjects. Today's subject? Anything Pokémon can do, Digimon already did. Is this title clickbaity? Absolutely, but only because it was fun for me to say out loud. Pokémon has been a contentious subject within the gaming community for a while now, but most of the recent incoherent screeching around the famous Pocket Monster franchise has, for the most part, circulated around Sword and Shield. With Diamond and Pearl's remake on store shelves at long last, and Pokémon Legends Arceus around the corner, the way I see it, there is no better time to toss my hat into the proverbial ring. Might as well jabber on about an issue or two I've had with the recent editions of the franchise, as well as my little comparison to that other virtual monster franchise that I adore. There are certain arguments in the fandom that I've always understood. Someone not liking how a Pokémon looks. Perfectly reasonable. Someone not liking how a main villain has terrible motivations for one reason or another. Okay, I can work with that. That's the sort of discourse I expect with the series at this point. But now it's evolved. Haha, get it? Evolved. Pokemon. Anyways, now the ugly face of the modern gamer has reared its bulbous head in public once again, which inevitably earns my endless chagrin. Between everything from the NationalDex controversy to the random upsets about characters' skin color and even their body type, it's a wonder I even check the internet anymore when a new game is announced. I know some of the worst of these people are trolls trying to be the most terrible humans possible to upset random people on the internet because of their monumental inferiority complex. But I'm not going to go out of my way to investigate each and every one of their Twitter accounts or troll goodness knows how many Reddit pages in order to find out who is real and who is fake. I don't have time for that. All I know is that I'm much happier when I only glance at these comments rather than playing Nancy Drew Fact Finder. And do you know why? Frankly, I deal with children during my day job, and even they are better behaved than over half of the adults on the internet. I've had half of my workday centered around a child talking to me non-stop about Roblox, Minecraft, and Fortnite. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm much more happy by the end of that workday than I ever am glancing at my phone to see the newest garbage an adult gamer spews out of their mouth. Yet, I digress. Let's talk about the aforementioned NationalDex controversy and my hypothesis on why people reacted the way they did. Since, as much as I'd like to say that people were overreacting to this whole thing, I believe that there's a method to the madness. And yes, it has something to do with the other franchise. We'll get to that. When it comes to Sword and Shield for me, it would make the most sense to start off with mostly Galar Pokemon and small amounts of Pokemon from other generations and a gradual trickle of introductions. I thought it was a good way to go about it for older fans, even though in my opinion it didn't give as many of the newer Pokemon as much of a chance to shine, with the focus on fan favorites like Charizard and Pikachu getting more alternate forms. Oh boy! If you don't give people some of the classics at the beginning, they may lose interest, and by people, I mean older fans like me who have money now, which Nintendo constantly panders to. It's understandable they wanted to make sure that you worked for the Pokemon you would want under normal circumstances, but unfortunately for Sword and Shield, it's beyond just normal circumstances. But I do have a little itty-bitty, tiny-whiny issue that sticks into my craw, and that'd be the DLC. Pokemon has always had DLC, don't get me wrong. It's had go to X store to get Y Pokemon for a certain amount of days, and if you don't, ever since the handhelds could wirelessly communicate. Yet, until now, that DLC never cost money outside of gas. In the base game, there are 400 Pokemon available, and this caused issues with the fanbase because, including this game, there are 898 Pokemon, which essentially meant that 498 Pokemon were missing. 498 that you couldn't unlock after beating the champion like you could in previous games. Then they announced the DLC, which allows you to catch 200 more Pokemon, leaving 298 Pokemon in the win for whatever DLC they wish to put in. Logically, I understand why they did it like this, since in a business sense it adds up. Make a new region, new legendaries, unlock some of your old favorites for the low price of $19.99. That's how other companies do it. Why should Nintendo and Game Freak be any different? From what I can tell, and this is mostly anecdotal evidence, so take it with a grain of salt if you wish, most people's issues with this was because of the previous game setting a precedent. In past games, once you made it through the game's main storyline, in post-game you can unlock your favorites and go about your merry way. Now, the business practices are different, and people are resistant to these ideas. That said, I do think that there's a game that does something similar to Pokemon Sword and Shield without causing much of a hullabaloo amongst its fanbase. And that game is Digimon Cyber Sleuth Complete Edition. In Digimon Cyber Sleuth, the roster of Digimon you can get is only 298, which is not nearly the amount of Digimon that actually exist in the world, which is, of course, a staggering 1,400 individual monsters. That's including all of the recolors, but what can you do, it's Digimon. This is a drop in the bucket compared to the amount that are available in the vanilla version of Sword and Shield. So why aren't people salty about the small portion of Digimon in comparison to how many there actually are? Simple. Digimon didn't set players' expectations to unlock the rest of the Digimon after defeating the main game, since that's never been the focus. Sure, you're able to unlock new Digivolutions after you beat it, but it matters a lot less than the actual post-game content, most of which are battles that are there for you to realize how inadequate your team is once you start getting your face caved in by a tiny, cherubic monster. But I digress! The question is, why is Digimon able to get away with providing battles and Digivolutions rather than a multitude of new Digimon to endlessly train? In my experience with the Digimon franchise, the focus has always been raising them and watching them grow. While Pokemon also emphasize that it is about your journey, the care part has always been more implied in the game's story rather than the gameplay itself, until recent years that is. Yes, you are going on an amazing journey with your favorite monsters. Yes, some trainers emphasize how strange it is that you love Pokemon, that you don't use them as tools to make money, fame, or what have you. The game has always praised the player at how well you take care of your Pokemon, when in reality there's been a dissonance to this concept. Since I personally don't feel like a good caretaker when I exile a Ditto to the Pokemon daycare for the next 10,000 years while I try to get a shiny Shinx. Sure, you gave Pokemon berries, which acted as AI-activated potions after a certain parameter is met. You can also use berries to raise the happiness factors of certain Pokemon to have them evolve, which implies a modicum of care for your little pocket monster. You can also help Pokemon gain happiness by having them in your party, keeping them healthy, giving them massages, and having them wear the Soothe Bell that calms them down. Yet we don't find ourselves actively engaging in or interacting with our Pokemon in that sort of caretaker way that Digimon allows, or at least not to the fullest extent. You can talk to your Pokemon in various games and they'll say a random thing or do a random action, which allows that virtual pet experience to a minimal degree. Yet, it wasn't until Pokemon X and Y that you got to physically pet, feed, and play with your Pokemon as an active game mechanic, this only being refined in Sword and Shield with the camping mechanic. This was something Digimon had in spades since the very beginning, with Digimon World and even the handheld Tamagotchi, was that it was all about actively caring for your Digimon while you were on your little adventure. This is to benefit both you and the Digimon, since they'll live long enough to grow up and become stronger, and you'll have a better Digimon in the long run. I mean, you even had to make sure it went to the bathroom so it didn't eliminate outside of their weird swan toilet. If that isn't an active part of pet ownership, I don't know what is. is. Even the more story-focused game like Digimon Cyber Sleuth has an entire mechanic with the Digi Islands where you can feed your Digimon and help them train one specific stat needed to Digivolve without bringing their level up, something that Pokemon Sword and Shield took notice of and implemented something similar in their own game, as well as the concept of your Pokemon in a sort of base camp and eating food with them. While I'm happy that Pokemon has adapted changes into their system, in many ways improving that inherent fantasy being on a magical journey with your Pokemon, the problem lies in the expectation of having all Pokemon available, which has unfortunately been set in previous titles. This is where Digimon has Pokemon beat because, in contrast, they've always included the fan favorites, and then an assortment of monsters from across the franchise. Mostly because Digimon is pretty hyper-focused on the Digidestined Digimon from each season when it comes to merchandising. So any Digimon that's strongly focused on in the shows is the target for the new game's roster. There's more correlation between the Digimon that are popular within the show's universe and which ones they end up putting in the games. Now, does that mean Pokemon fans are entitled to their needless rage about the NationalDex lacking some of their favorites upon launch? No. Disappointment? Yes. But the vitriol that the fandom sprayed because of this has been unacceptable. I do think the lack of the NationalDex was a pure business move on Nintendo's part, so they could trickle in the old favorites and the new Pokemon steadily like an IV drip in a patient's arm. It's a slow process, but it's still making them the money they want, in addition to, all the merchandise. I think a lot of the gamers that were upset about this were the ones that likely grew up on the old marketing for the series, or those who have consumed it, particularly the oldest dub of Pokemon, which drilled in the phrase, gotta catch 'em all, yeah, into their heads. Completing the Pokedex was a huge part of the Pokemon experience. It has been for several games, and for those who have stuck with the franchise for years, they're used to that. And while that hasn't necessarily changed, there are less Pokemon to fill out your roster with. In that same breath, though, I also think that Generation 8, almost more so than the previous generations, really wants to be the one that introduces the most people to the franchise. Between Pokemon Let's Go, Pokemon Sword and Shield, and the Gen 4 remakes, I think they're trying to appeal to a new generation more than they had previously, especially with how Pokemon Go has made Pokemon easy to access for people of all ages. Because that's something even older gamers tend to forget about. You never know what someone's first Pokemon game is. I'll admit, even I was a little salty about Pokemon that weren't included in Sword and Shield. At the same time though, I'm not gonna hate on Sword and Shield for that reason. I will, however, tear its attempt at a narrative to pieces, but I think that's a video for another day. I'm Red Angel, and I'll see you next time.